All right, let's get into it. Today, we're cracking open the playbook of a guy who has become a true titan of sales, Ryan Serhant. We're going to break down the core strategies from his book and figure out how he built a massive sales empire from, well, basically nothing. Now, this isn't just some dry book about selling houses. It's really the blueprint for a complete personal reinvention. It's the story of how a shy, kind of awkward kid they used to call Crying Ryan became a billion-dollar producer in one of the most brutal markets on the planet. And that's the real question, right? I mean, how in the world does that happen? It's one thing to be good at sales, but it's another thing entirely to completely change who you are from the inside out. So what was the secret? What was that turning point? Okay, but here's the crazy part. The timing. His very first day as a real estate agent was September 15th, 2008. If that date rings a bell, it should. That's the exact day Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, kicking off the Great Recession. Talk about starting the game on the hardest difficulty setting. And yeah, the results were pretty brutal. In his entire first year, as the market was just imploding, he made a grand total of $9,000 in New York City. I mean, you can barely survive on that for a month, let alone a whole year. This wasn't just struggling, this was flat out failing. But then you fast forward just 9 years, and that same guy is now leading a team that sells almost $1 billion in real estate in 1 year. The gap between those two numbers is just staggering. And the journey between them, that's where all the lessons are. So here's the crucial point. The change didn't start with some new sales tactic or a fancy script. It started internally. Before he could ever change his bank account, he had to completely rewire his own mindset. He talks about this one day, this absolute rock bottom moment. He gets totally lost in the West Village with a client who's getting more and more annoyed. Then he gets back to the office, only to hear his super successful coworker, a guy named Ben Kennedy, just closing deal after deal. He's totally demoralized, so he steps out onto the fire escape and calls his older brother Jimmy for help. And his brother's advice? Well, it wasn't exactly a warm hug. It was blunt, brutal even. No pep talk, no 10-step plan, just a direct kick-in-the-pants wake-up call. His brother tells him to suck it up, hangs up the phone, and that right there, that single moment, was the turning point for everything. That one phone call was like a complete software update for his brain. He suddenly realized three things. First off, nobody was coming to rescue him. He had to take initiative himself. Second, that crippling fear of being broke, that wasn't a weakness. That was rocket fuel. And third, confidence isn't something you just magically get. It's a decision you make. You decide to be the best, and then you act like it. Okay, so with this brand new mindset installed, how did he actually put it into action? Well, he developed this really practical method for managing his work, something he calls the balls up method. And it's all about one word: volume. The core idea is actually pretty simple. You have to stop treating your deals like they're these precious, fragile things. He says to think of it like being a kid who wants all their toys out at once. Why put one away just to play with another? He argues that the mental energy you spend stressing out over one deal is the same energy you could use to manage six. So you should always have a bunch of opportunities going at the same time. And in practice, this means you're always juggling. You've got multiple balls in the air. You're prospecting for new leads, you're showing properties, negotiating an offer, handling financing, maybe even dealing with a contract falling through. The whole point is to never be totally dependent on just one of those balls landing. If you keep a bunch of them up in the air, your pipeline is always full, and you never have to sit there wondering, okay, now what? Sales, at its core, is a volume game. All right, so you've got the mindset, you've got the method, but we all know sales is about people. So the final piece of this whole puzzle is mastering the art of human connection. And this quote right here, this is basically his golden rule. The goal is not to be some pushy salesperson trying to force a decision. It's to become a trusted advisor, basically a friend in the process. When you build that genuine connection, the sale just becomes a natural result of the relationship, not some big battle you have to win. He lays out this spectrum of salespeople. On one end, you've got the classic, aggressive, used car salesman who only cares about the sale. On the complete other end, you have the passive tour guide who's great with the client but never actually asks for the close. The Serhant way is right in the middle. You work for the deal. That means you're serving your client's needs, but you are also relentlessly pushing toward a successful outcome for everybody involved. And a huge part of working for the deal is just being open to every single opportunity. It means saying yes when pretty much every other salesperson would immediately say no. And there is no better example of this than the absolutely wild story of a client he just calls Mr. X. So check this out. This is the actual email that pops into his inbox early in his career. I mean, come on. Mr. X of Atlantis? This has spam written all over it, right? 99 out of 100 people would hit delete without a second thought. But Serhant, he said yes. And what happened next was just insane. After a few emails, Mr. X went silent, so Serhant emails him saying he'll be in Paris soon, basically calling his bluff. And Mr. X bites. So Serhant spends his last few $1,000s on a plane ticket, flies to Paris, and after this marathon negotiation fueled by hundreds of dollars of vodka, he actually gets a contract signed. But then, nothing. Weeks of radio silence until one day, a wire transfer for $820,000 just appears in the company's account. The final commission from that one ridiculous deal was almost $500,000. It's the ultimate proof of his philosophy. Sometimes the biggest rewards are hiding behind the craziest, most unlikely-looking opportunities. So, what does all this mean for you? How can you take this playbook and actually use it to hit your own goals? Well, it really all comes down to those 3 core ideas we've been talking about. First up, master your mindset. Make the decision to be confident and start using fear as your motivator. Second, adopt the method. Remember that sales is a volume game, so learn to juggle more opportunities. And finally, third, master connection. Build real relationships, always work for the deal, and say yes to those opportunities that kind of scare you. You know, Serhant's big turning point wasn't some huge, dramatic event. It was a nasty comment on a fire escape that just forced him to take one small, different action the very next day. So the question to leave you with is this. What's the one small risk, the one yes you can commit to right now that could become your own turning point?